Shalom, Yasharala Shalom. It's the brother Ash Ibad, and I want to give all praises to the Most High Yahawah in the name of His only begotten Son Yahawashi. And I'm gonna get right to the video because it might be long. There was basically a sister who commented on my old live stream I did with brothers. I want to say like a year and a half ago. I'm assuming we're breaking down Deuteronomy 28 and many of the curses that will be placed upon the Israelites and how to be able to tell whether you're an Israelite or not. So the sister's name was Daughter of Yah. And basically, she asked a good question. And this is probably one of the most controversial topics in the Bible. You can get many debates. You can get a lot of hatred of people whenever you explain to them who salvation is for. Because many people have the Christian church doctrine and even many camps in Israel. Not all of them, but there is a decent portion of Israelites who proclaim that all nations can receive salvation. And you have to understand that when it comes to the kingdom of heaven, there's three distinct roles that all the peoples of the earth are going to be in. You have what is called heaven on earth, which most Christians call going to heaven, which is a false doctrine, by the way. But you have those who will be deemed those who will be given salvation, and that's pertaining unto the saints. That's pertaining unto the elect that the Most High is going to redeem from the foundations of earth, who are predestined to be of the Lord's elect, to be of the Lord's chosen, right? Then you also have the second role, which is going to be those who will be destroyed in the lake of fire. You see what I'm saying? Those who will be cast away, burned, and tormented in the Most High's lake of fire. But you have a third role, which the Christian church oftentimes doesn't, bring out when it comes to the scriptures. A lot of times people will overlook it and they don't really break it down and understand it because it's not really mentioned in the New Testament outside of Revelation 13, but it's mentioned all throughout the Old Testament. And that's the concept of other nations going into servitude or captivity. You have to be able to understand that the other nations, once this world passes away, they will be under subjection of the nation of Israel. But if you don't understand the scriptures on it, you're going to group people who are of the nation of Israel who appear as another nation, Israelite foreigners, and say that they too can receive salvation if they are of another nation. And that's quite frankly not true. When you say that, you bastardize a lot of the scriptures, and what happens is that there's a lot of contradictions, and we understand that the Bible doesn't contradict itself. So that's my job today, to just break that down. I've done other videos on it, but I figured this would be a good time to kind of recite many of the scriptures of the old videos and just do a new video. You see what I mean? So let's go to the book of Daniel chapter 7. So this is Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. It says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days sat, whose garment was white like snow, and his hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. And this is basically the description of the Most High. Verse 10, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousand upon thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000s times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke. I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. So there's a lot of stuff going on. This is actually speaking about Judgment Day, when the Most High is going to open up his books and he's going to give people their final lot, right? So verse 11, it says, I beheld because the voice of the great word which the horn spoke. I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. And many people think that that's speaking about the devil or Satan, or what they assume is, the red man with the pitchfork, right? But that's actually talking about a specific nation. When you read the Bible, you have to understand when it speaks about beast of the field, a lot of times that's not in reference to a literal animal, but a group of people or a powerful kingdom. Because when you look at a beast, it's what? It's a predator. It devours, it kills. It has, a lot of strength and might to not only rule over other animals in the forest, but to have control over its habitat. So in this time, relating it to people, that's talking about a group or a nation of people who have the power to rule and put other people in subjection. So whenever you read in the Bible, the beast or the beast of the field, many times relating to prophecy, it's not talking about an animal, but an actual people. And this is talking about how a beast would be slain and destroyed and given to the burning flame. That's talking about the nation of Esau. If you read in the book of Obadiah, it specifically states about how the nation of Esau will be cut off forever, and that Israel would have them for their possession and their lands for possession until they were burnt up and destroyed. Because at the end of the day, the Most High has indignation towards them forever. So you got to ask yourself a very straightforward question. If the Most High has indignation towards somebody forever, Romans 9:13, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. How could an Edomite receive salvation if, according to prophecy, they're meant to be destroyed forever? Again, the Most High, he does not change. Going back to what I think is Micah chapter 4, verse 3. Or 4, verse 6, Salaki. So whenever you understand that, and you understand how the Most High's judgments are always going to play out, and that his words do not lie or contradict, what you start to understand is that if you're an Edomite, there's no way that you can be saved. In fact, you're destined for destruction, which the Edomites in this day, for the vast majority of them, there are the so-called white man, the so-called Caucasian man. So when you start to understand that there's different judgments for different nations, it allows you to be able to know what's going to happen to them, Now, continuing on, verse 12, it says, as concerning the rest of the beasts, meaning the other nations of people, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season in time. So essentially, any other nation who ruled, whether it be, we could talk about the Ishmaelites. If you're familiar with the Islamic empires, they ruled over Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Middle Eastern area. You also have the Elamites, which are the East Indians. They had a very vast empire in India. Also they are the Persians. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Medo-Persian Empire. Of course, you had the so-called white man, the Macedonians first with Alexander the Great, Alexander the Macedonian. He had the Greco-Roman Empire, started in Greece, extended to all four corners of the known world at that time, which is around the Mediterranean, as well as the Middle Eastern part of the world, North Africa, and Southern and Eastern Europe. And then you also had the Roman Empire, which for the most part, at that specific time of Imperial Rome, was ruled over by the Edomites. But we can keep going back. You got the Hamites who ruled ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet. So you notice that many other nations, they had vast empires. So in verse 12, when it speaks about as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away. And dominion just means rulership. So on the day of judgment, the Most High is going to take away their ability to be able to rule the earth. But it says, yet their lives were prolonged for a season in time, meaning they wouldn't receive the same judgment as Esau, Edom, where they would eventually be destroyed, but that they would be in subjection unto who? Unto the saints, unto the nation of Israel. So when you understand that, it's easier for you to understand, the roles of other people, of other nations. So you read verse 13, it says, I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion, glory, a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. And that's speaking about Christ. That's speaking about Yahawashi Hamashiach, because we understand he's going to be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And he's going to have an everlasting kingdom that will not pass away. You can read it right here. It says his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, in his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So essentially you understand that he's going to rule over the earth, and who's going to rule with him? Verse 18, I read verse 17, it says, these great beasts which are four kings which shall rise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and ever, right? And going down, because I want to read all of this. Well, actually, I'll just read through it. This is verse 19. It says, then I will know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were iron and nail of brass, which devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and on the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spoke very great, whose look was more stout than his fellows. So this is speaking about the Roman Empire, because they were more dreadful and more powerful than the 3 kingdoms that Daniel prophesied before him. Because Daniel prophesied about ancient Babylon, which is where Nebuchadnezzar came from. He spoke about the Medes and the Persians, which I think it was Darius, and I think Sirius the second or Sirius the third, who were ruling in that time. And then after them, we had Alexander the Great, Alexander the Macedonian, who essentially conquered them and set up that rulership, right? And it transitioned into Imperial Rome. So the fourth beast is speaking about Imperial Rome. But one thing that you have to also understand is that in this time, this modern day society that we live in right now is a reincarnation of that previous empire in Imperial Rome, because it's the same society. You have the same gods. I mean, I'm sure you probably know about Christmas or Saturnalia. That was an ancient Roman festival that was celebrated, and it's going on today. Also, you have that global system. You have the spiritual side of things run by who? The Pope, who resides where? I think he resides in the Vatican, which is in a modern day Rome, right? For the most part. Y'all brothers could correct me on that. But you also have to understand that America is also modern day Rome, but it's the militaristic aspect, which is why America, they rule with their might, they rule with their guns, they rule with, just the ability to conquer and destroy anybody who comes in their way. And they have a worldwide system similar to what ancient Rome had over 2,000 years ago. So when you understand that, verse 20, it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, the 10 horns of his head is speaking about the Roman Empire reinvigorated, right? And I read verse 21, it says, I behold, in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So we understand that in this day, there will be a kingdom that will rule on the earth before the saints will rule. And you have to understand that's talking about modern day today, because even when Christ came, the saints didn't rule over the earth. In fact, they were being persecuted and they were in subjection unto the Romans. But if you read in 2nd Ezra chapter 9, verse 6, it says, Esau is the end of the world. The so-called white man is the ruler of the end of the world. And Jacob is the beginning of the world to come. So you have to understand that Jacob is going to rule in the kingdom of heaven, but Esau is going to rule at the end of the world today. So once you understand that, you understand what time period we're in, and you understand why this chapter, when it breaks down how a beast would be destroyed and burned up, it's talking about Esau. And then you understand that the other nations would be in subjection. Now, one thing you also asked me on your question is, you said, I thought salvation was extended to all who believe. And basically I spoke on that and I said, there will be handmaidens and servants to Israel. Salvation is specifically stated. It's for the 2 kingdoms of Israel. Hebrews 8:8. For finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith Yahawah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And when you read that, it's very plain. Again, a lot of people like to say, oh, no, that's talking about all the other people of other nations. No. Understand, when it speaks about the new covenant, when it speaks about salvation, it's very specific with the group of peoples that it's talking about. So I want to break that down. So let's go to John 3:16. So it says, for the Most High so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For the Most High sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. So again, obviously, you probably heard this before. If you went to church, your grandma and your mama and your daddy and your grandpapa and everybody was saying, oh, Jesus so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. The cliche argument that many of these Christians talk about. But again, that's why you got to really study about that term world, because again, through translation, the word has different meanings based off of the context. So you can see right here the outline of biblical usage, and you see many different definitions. The definition that I want to get is the 8th definition, where it says an aggregate or general collection of particulars of any sort. So it means a general collection of particulars of any sort. And then it gives you a definition or example. The Gentiles as contrasted to the Jews, Romans 11:12. And I'm actually going to get that scripture a little bit later. So when you see that word world, or in the Greek it's called cosmos, again, you have to be able to put it in the right context, in a proper place. And that's what this is speaking of in John chapter 3, verse 16. Now, this isn't the first time you've seen that definition, though. Let's go to Isaiah 45. Salaki, I meant Isaiah 45 and 17. It says, but Israel shall be saved in the Most High with the everlasting salvation. You shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. Because essentially the Most High's world is what? His possession, his battle axe, his weapon of war. Because you have to understand, like, I don't know if you into sports or anything like that, but I'm into sports. So when you look about like a lot of these terms, people say, oh, Ja Morant is shaking up the basketball world, or Tom Brady, he's the ruler of the football world, or the world of, I don't know, the world of feminism, or the world of rap. You have to understand what that means. It's essentially talking about the world of whatever specific topic it is in relation to, right? So when you read Isaiah 45 and 17, it says, Israel shall be saved in the Most High with the everlasting salvation. You shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. When it says world without end, it's speaking about the world or the group or the inhabitants of the specific topic that's being stated in the first half of the verse, which is what? Israel. How the Most High would never forsake Israel, and how Israel would never have a time or period where the Most High would essentially forget about them. Even in the Most High's indignation when we committed wickedness, spiritual idolatry, we were rebellious and stubborn, the Most High never gave up on us, because it's written that he would never give up on us. That's the redemption story. That's what the movie of this life that we living in right now is actually about. So you look at that term world, it's speaking about the world of Israel. Just like if you talk to a basketball player, you say, oh, the world of sports, or the world of hockey, or whatever. I know I'm talking the world of gaming. You know what I mean? Now, just to further prove that, let's go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon. So I'll read verse 1 so you can get it again. It says, nevertheless, thy saints had a very great light, whose voice they hearing and not seeing their shape, because they also had not suffered the same things, they counted them happy. So again, you see the word saints associated with light. Now read verse 4, because when you understand the Bible, what is light? The light of the law, right? The commandments. So verse 4 it says, for they were worthy to be deprived of light and imprisoned in darkness, who had kept your sun shut up, by whom the uncorrupt light of the law was to be given unto the world. So again, to the world. Again, that's talking about the nation of Israel, because if you read in Psalms 147 and 18, the Most High's laws, statutes, and judgments were given unto the nation of Israel. All right, it says, he shows his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He has not dealt so with any nation. I'm going to just stop right there. Because again, the Most High showed his words, his statutes, his judgments unto Israel. And back in Wisdom of Solomon, it says the light of the law was given unto the world. So again, when you look at world, it's just short for world of Israel. And just to further prove the point, even when you go to the book of Romans, because all these Christians like to come in, oh, well, that's the Old Testament. Okay, the Old Testament, right? Well, let's go to the New Testament. Since you love the New Testament so much, let's go and show you something in the New Testament. And this is one thing a lot of times Christians will get confounded on. Verse 13, it says, for I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them, which is, he's speaking about the Jews, be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? And again, Jew is just short for Judah. The kingdom of Judah was the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Levi. Because you have to understand, if you read in 1 Kings, the nation of Israel, which was unified, was broken up into two kingdoms. So you have to be able to understand that the Levites were in the northern kingdom, and they came down into the land of Judah due to the spiritual idolatry that was going on in the northern kingdom. So when you look up the term Jew, it's just short for somebody from the land of Judah, which is the southern kingdom. So that's who Paul was speaking about when it came to the casting away of them. And when it says be the reconciling of the world, again, the reconciling of the world of Israel. When you reconcile something, you bring something up. Like a man and a woman may be on bad terms. They may be about to divorce and be permanently separated. But what happens? They reconcile. They find that love again. They redo the terms of agreement. So when you were asking me about this, the second covenant, that was basically a covenant of reconciliation for the scattered of the lost sheep of the nation of Israel. And not just talking about the three tribes in the land of Judah, but all 12, really 13 if you count Ephraim, because Ephraim has is Ephraim, and then I think it's Manasseh, which is basically representative of Joseph. So that's what the reconciling of the world means. The 10 tribes who were cast off, and they were brought back into the covenant once Yahawashi, once Christ, once he returned and he reconciled them with his blood. Does that make sense? So when you start to understand salvation and who it's for, it's a lot easier for you to be able to understand who can be saved. And when I mean by saved, I'm talking about eternal life. A lot of times people think saved mean, you're not going to be killed and destroyed in the destruction. But what I mean by salvation and what the term means saved in the Bible in John 3:16, that's talking about those who will receive everlasting life and will get a new body. The other heathen nations aren't going to get that. And that's why when you read in Hebrews 8:8, where it says, this is a new covenant I will make with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, that's talking about them receiving bodies that allow them to be immortal. But that's not for every nation. Now, getting into the other aspect, I want to touch on your comment where I said how the other nations will be handmaidens and servants unto Israel. And then you basically asked, you said, okay, so if they're doing everything according to Yahawah, which is really Yahawah, they can expect to be our handmaids and servants. That's basically what he meant when he said salvation is for all. So I just want to break that down because you asked me a lot and I don't want to get too off topic. But long story short, anybody who's going according to the will of Yahawah in this day and age can't be a heathen, if that makes sense. Because even when you look at many of the other nations, right, and the people of the other nations, most of them are in the church. Most of them are Roman Catholics. Most of them are, Muslims. And even many people who call on the name Yeshua, a lot of times, many of them don't really worship the Most High in the proper spirit and in truth. Let's go to the book of Hebrews. I mean, not Hebrews, the book of John. So this is John chapter 4, verse 22. It says, you worship you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh and is now when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. So essentially, for you to truly worship the Most High, you have to worship him in spirit and in truth. You can't worship him, but then celebrate Christmas. You can't worship him, but then eat pork. You can't worship him fully if you're not of the nation of Israel, if you're not of the seed of the 12 patriarchs of Israel, point blank, period. And a lot of people may not like that because they want to be included in it. But we speak the truth. We speak the proper understanding of the Bible and not what most people want us to say. And that's why you're not going to really hear this in the vast majority of congregations on earth and in certain camps in Israel, because a lot of them have either been paid off or a lot of them just have a misunderstanding of the Bible. So let's actually look into certain scriptures that prove what's going to happen to the judgment of the other nations. So this is Isaiah 14:1. It says, for the Most High will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the stranger shall be joined unto them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, meaning who? If you want to say the other nations, the strangers of the other nations, right? It says the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahawah, which is talking about the land of Israel, for servants and handmaidens. And they shall take them captives, who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So essentially the Most High's people in the kingdom, and this is talking about the land, this is talking about the kingdom of heaven, because Israel can't be in the land of Israel until the kingdom is established on earth, point blank, period, which is another sign that you can see that the fake Jews, really the Amalekites, they're the ones who are in Israel right now, because there's no way that the true biblical Israelites could be in the Holy Land until the Most High says they can't. We're in exile from the Holy Land at this point in time. But when we return unto the Holy Land, we're going to have servants and handmaidens. Because how can you have a kingdom? How can you rule over people if you don't have subjects underneath you? That's how the Most High works. For you to be able to rule, you have to have people who are underneath you. Point blank, period. Right? So it says they will be handmaidens and they will be taken as captives. Let's also get another scripture. I'll start at verse 11. It says, therefore your gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, talking about a type of like tribute, you know, like if you're a vassal state, you have to pay tribute unto your ruler, and that their kings may be brought. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve you shall perish. Yea, these nations shall be utterly wasted. So the Most High is letting you know, any nation that chooses not to serve, like let's say example, the Ishmaelites, which most people today call the so-called Arabs, right? But we're just going to call them according to their biblical term, the Ishmaelites, right? If let's say they're in the kingdom and they try to buck up and go against what the Most High stipulated, that they would rule, that we would rule over them, the Most High would destroy them. Literally, it says right here, for the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yea, these nations shall be utterly wasted. So I'm going to ask a simple question. If in the kingdom of heaven, another nation can be destroyed for not serving the Most High, how could they have the laws written in their inward parts? Because again, the law is the Most High's commandments, right? So if you have everlasting life, that means that you can't go off. That means that you can't sin. So if another nation has to be subjected to serve somebody and they have the ability to go off and not go after what the Most High said, that means that they don't actually have the Most High's laws inside of them, meaning that they can't live forever. They can't receive salvation forever. And I'm going to explain that a little bit deeper, but I want to go over some more of these scriptures before we get into that. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And if you read in verse 11, it says, I behold another beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. You have to understand that that's relaying back to that scripture in Daniel, where it spoke about how the fourth beast was exceedingly dreadful, and it will make war against the saints. So this is basically speaking about the same time period, but this is in regards to Revelation chapter 13. So it's telling you about how whoever led into captivity will go into captivity, and whoever killeth with the sword must be killed by the sword. Because how the Most High works is he's fair and he's just in all his ways. Whatever wicked deed that you do, especially in regards to the Most High's people, he gonna pay you back. The Most High never delays on his promises. So this is talking about how different nations who ruled over the Israelites, they will be in captivity in due time, right? Now let's go to Micah 4. It says, and many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, in the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his path. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So in the kingdom of heaven, there's not going to be any war. So again, we're not in that covenant right now. We're not in that time period right now, Salaki, what I mean to say. Because at the end of the day, people still dying. People still going to war. In fact, the biggest war in history hasn't showed up yet, which is what? World War III. So in the kingdom, there's not going to be any type of war and division amongst the nations. Every nation is going to be in full subjection. But all the other nations are going to have to come to Israel to learn the ways of the Lord. But in the nation, in the kingdom, there's a distinct aspect of Israel that they're not going to have to know the Most High's ways and learn them, meaning because they're already going to be ingrained in their mind. I was going to save this for later, but I figure I'll just pull it up. So when you go to the book of Hebrews chapter 8, I read verse 7, it says, for if that first covenant was faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Most High, when I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they did not continue in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Most High. For this is a covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after these days, saith Yahawah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least unto the greatest. So one of the key aspects about understanding Israel in the Most High in perfection is that all of Israel will know the Lord. Again, in this time period, we got Jakes who's calling upon Jesus Christ. We got Jakes who's worshiping Saturn. I mean, y'all understand what happened with Christmas. We got Jakes who believe in Cometicism. who call on the sun god Ra, who call on Osiris, who call on Isis. You see what I'm saying? We have many Israelites who are atheists, right? So you have to understand that when the new covenant happens, all of Israel will know who the Most High is. And there will be no need for brothers to teach and for brothers to make videos. You see what I mean? So in the kingdom, all of Israel will know the Lord. But if you go back to the book of Micah, why does the book of Micah say that the other nations will be taught the ways of the Lord? Because they're not going to have the laws in their inward parts. And if you don't have the laws in your inward parts, that means that you're what? That you're subject to death, because there is a possibility that you can sin if you don't follow after the ways of the Lord. But again, in John chapter 3:16, it says, whosoever believes shall receive everlasting life. So the people who receive everlasting life are essentially going to be those who are deemed to have an incorruptible body. And I was going to say that for later, but I'm just bringing it out. Let's actually go to Romans chapter 7. So I want to get this before I explain the incorruptible body, so that way you understand why our body's corrupt. In regards to what happened with Adam and Eve, they committed idolatry, which essentially allowed for sin or death to come into the world. Now we understand the wages of sin are what? Are death. So essentially, for us to not die, we have to not be able to sin. Now as Romans 7:20 says, now if I do that, I would not. It is no more that I do it, but the sin that dwelleth in me, your inherent nature to want to commit fornication. You know, you may have certain lusts when you go on the internet, when you go on YouTube, Instagram, you see certain things. And what do you have to do? You have to fight it. On the Sabbath, what do you have to do? You have to fight yourself to not, work on the Sabbath, to not want to do things according to your own will on the Sabbath. You have to fight to not want to eat abominations. You have to fight to not want to celebrate Christmas and these pagan holidays. Now, it does get easier the longer that you're in this thing, but you're in a constant fight. You're in a constant battle. Why? Because even though you understand what the Most High told you, even though his spirit is placed upon you to give you a certain way to resist temptation, your physical body, the corrupt body that me and you are in, is always fighting against what the Most High told you to do. That's why if you read this, Paul spoke on this. Verse 21, it says, I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present in me. That's the dualistic nature of being in this body. We want to do good in according to the eyes of the Lord, but we're always tempted by our flesh. Verse 22, it says, for I delight in the law of the Lord after the inward man, but I see another law of my members warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? So in this physical body that we're in, we're subject to death due to our sins and due to our transgressions at the end of the day. So the only way that you can essentially not sin according to the eyes of the Most High and essentially be fully in that second covenant is if you receive what? The glorified body, the body that can't be corrupted because of one key aspect. The Most High's laws are going to be automatically placed in it, that you're not going to be able to sin whatsoever. It says, for this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass that is saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. And essentially what that means is that your ability to die is swallowed up when you're transformed into that new body. You will essentially be perfect, and you will be given everlasting life, because you will not be able to sin and transgress the Most High's laws anymore. It says, O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to the Most High, which giveth us victory through our Lord Yahawashi Hamashiach. And that's essentially what Yahawashi's role was. His role was to be that example and to open up the seal for the second covenant, to show believers the way and the walk of how they're supposed to go. And in regards to the question you asked me in regards to Hebrews chapter 10, I'll do another video on that. But essentially his blood is an intermediary for all the sins that we're committing, because in this time we don't have a temple. We don't have a physical high priest who's able to commit sacrifices for us. So essentially what Yahawashi is he's that greater mediator, that greater high priest. So whenever we commit sin, whatever it may be, if the Most High allows us to be one of Yahawashi's sheep, then essentially our sins are forgiven through his blood. But we're not going to fully know for certain until the day of judgment, when the Most High gives us the judgment of everlasting life, or he allows us to be destroyed in the lake of fire. So that's what you have to understand when it comes to that, right? The second covenant is not here. The only difference between the first and the second in the time that we're in right now is that instead of us having to offer sacrifices daily or monthly or on the Day of Atonement, burning a physical lamb or a turtle dove, etc., is that the blood of Yahawashi on the spiritual realm covers the iniquity of those who are of the Most High's elect. And we don't know for certain whether we're of the elect until that time period comes, right? So that's how you have to do. That's what you have to do when it comes to understanding everything. I was going to save this till after I explain the judgment of the heathen, but I figured I'd just get into it. So essentially in the kingdom, this is going to be the state of the earth and how the earth is going to be commanded by the Israelites. Let's go to Ezekiel 17:22. It says, "Thus saith the Most High, I will take of the highest branch of the high cedar and will set it. I will crop off from the top of his young twigs a tender one, and will plant it upon a high mountain and eminent. In a mountain of the height of Israel will I plant it." And basically that high branch is speaking about the branch of the lineage of Yahawashi, because he came from what? The stem of Jesse, which is essentially King David's father. So Yahawashi, Christ, he's of the lineage of David. So he is the highest cedar because he is of the line of kings. When you look at a tree, it's like a family tree. So the highest branch is essentially the highest form of rulership when it comes to the nation of Israel. So the high cedar is talking about the tree of Israel. That's why when you go back to Romans 11 and I think it's 15, it talks about the branches will be grafted back onto that tree. That's talking about the lineage of the chosen of the nation of Israel. You see? So it says, "In the mountain of the height of Israel will I plant it, and shall bring forth boughs and bear fruit, in a goodly cedar, and under it shall dwell all fowl of every wing." So again, remember, a beast or a fowl is in reference to another nation. So they will be underneath the goodly cedar, meaning they will be underneath serving the nation of Israel. "In the shadow of the branches shall for they dwell." And the branches is talking about the 12 tribes, the 12 branches of the nation of the patriarch Jacob. Verse 24. "And all the trees of the field shall know that I, Yahawah, have brought down the high tree," meaning the high tree, the nation of Esau, the so-called white man, the so-called Caucasian, which is the high tree. He will bring that down, and he will exalt the low tree, meaning he will exalt those who are at the bottom of society, those being the Israelites. It says, "I have dried up the green tree and have made the dry tree to flourish. I, Yahawah, have spoken it." So that's basically it. You know, hopefully it was edifying. I know it's a little bit long. I know there's many points and it can be kind of confusing. But essentially, in regards to your question, people who are not of Israel, who the Lord will not destroy, they will be servants in the kingdom, point blank, period. And those who are of the righteous of the nation of Israel, they will be transformed and they will be given a glorified body, which essentially hasn't happened yet. So when you understand that, that's why we strive for righteousness. That's why we go out and we try to share the word. We try to preach and teach to others to know the Most High, because that allows us to get closer unto the end of this society and the coming of the new society, where essentially the Israelites, those who be of the elect, they will rule over all the other nations. So Lord willing, you know, you be a part of it. Lord willing, I'll be a part of it. Any brother and sister watching this, striving for righteousness, you be a part of it. And essentially outside of those two roles, everybody else is going to be destroyed and burned in the lake of fire. So I want to give all praises to the Most High Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Until next time, it's the brother Ash Ibad. I'm signing out.